Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics from Kansas City, July 4th weekend edition. We are joined with maybe the person who's made the biggest splash this year in Missouri politics. Maybe the biggest win for the Democrats in Missouri in several years. Lauren Arthur, Senator-elect, is that fair to say?
That's right.
Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you so much.
So you actually have won a race, turned a tide. Mike Rivas won an election in Jefferson County for the Democrats. You flipped a state Senate seat held by Senator Sylvie in Clay County. Tell me why you won.
Well, I was along for the ride. All the credit goes to our volunteers. We had families coming out to canvass neighborhoods on the weekends. We had people who would work entire shifts and then come and pick up a packet and go knock doors. And we had people across the state writing postcards, making phone calls, and it was all that volunteer power and enthusiasm that excited people in the district to get out and vote.
But don't you think, I think it's a fair compliment or observation to say you were a good candidate for the time. You were a good candidate for the district. It seems like a good year to run as a woman. Seems like a good year to run pro-labor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I grew up in the district, so I would knock on a door and find someone who I went to school with their kid years before. And so I had those kinds of connections with the district, but I was also fortunate to earn the support of working men and women. And I think that message of Jefferson City has been relentless in its attacks against working families really resonated with people in the district. They see it every day in their own lives and know the stakes are high. And they were motivated not only to vote, but also to show up and volunteer.
Okay, you're a labor guy, right? You've been voting Republican. Numbers show you have been.
I am a labor guy, yes.
Well, I'm just saying, let's start with the hypothetical labor guy, not you, the labor guy. You've been voting Republican, and I think maybe the wink and the nod was you're voting for some pro-labor Republicans, or you were electing people because of guns and other issues. You thought they wouldn't go after your union. Now they have.
Right.
Labor supported you big. It looks to me like labor members are fired up to vote in August. Can they maintain that intensity, and will they vote Democrat in November?
Well, I hope they find candidates that they really believe in and who are going to stick up for them, because the fight doesn't end in August. You know, these attacks will continue, and the only way that we can start beating it back is if we have more elected people in Jefferson City who are going to push back against anti-labor reform.
There's an issue that I thought, you ran against Representative Kevin Corlin, serious legislator, similar to yourself, and both of you talked about transportation issues. I always thought you can tell the difference between like serious people and not. Like Republicans will say waste, fraud, and abuse, but serious people, they know there's a transportation issue. Is the measure on the ballot in November something that would be an adequate first step?
So I support it. It's long overdue. It's what we knew we needed to do, what we've known for years and years, and I'm glad that there was finally leadership to move that forward and allow the voters to decide. I don't love the fact that we say it's for roads and bridges, improving roads and bridges, but that money is actually going to the highway patrol. And I just think, I wonder what impact that will have in voters' minds when we say that this is a gas tax to improve roads and bridges, but actually that money isn't being dedicated directly to MoDOT. And so, I think it's interesting, but
do you think maybe the Highway Patrol shouldn't be funded along with MoDOT? They're sort of funded in the same budget area. Should they break that up?
I'm not saying that. I think MoDOT certainly, or the Highway Patrol certainly needs more funding, and so I don't oppose that. I just wonder if voters feel like it's a disingenuous attempt to get them to, they want to see what they're voting to increase will pay off directly to what we're telling them.
This seems like an odd question to ask. I think most people will assume it just happened, but this wasn't the case for a couple of years. Has the new governor, Mike Patterson, called you? Have you spoke to him?
He called me the day that I was elected, actually, that night, and I really appreciated how gracious he was in his phone call. And then we connected just a few days after that and talked about his top priorities for the state.
He's talked a lot about roads himself, just out of the gate.
I'm glad that that's one of his top priorities, as well as workforce development, and I think that should be every legislator's top priority. So there should be plenty of areas where we agree. I suspect there will be other areas where we don't agree, but I appreciate that he's returning some dignity to that office.
Let's talk about another office that's open. Jason Kander, someone that you know, is decided he's going to run for mayor. Looks like he's the prohibitive favorite.
Yeah. I think Jason stands a really good chance to win, and Kansas City needs someone who's going to be a really strong advocate and who's going to showcase the best parts of the city as well as sort of be a visionary leader. And I have every confidence that Jason is that person and can do that. There are other.
That's talented.
Yeah, very talented. There are other great candidates in the race too. So I look forward to seeing the campaign play out, but I would definitely say he's a favorite. Speaking
of the campaign, let's talk about Claire McCaskill, someone that was very vocal in support of you for your state Senate run. Josh Hawley, I think that whatever your views on the politics are, Claire McCaskill is a smart, very hardworking senator who was certainly not shamed the state in office.
Right.
Josh Hawley, energetic young guy. The Supreme Court thing seemed like it was a wrinkle that may actually help Hawley, may organize some people behind him. What do you think Claire McCaskill needs to do to win Clay County by as much as she needs to win the state?
Well, I think she's already doing it. She's showing up and she's talking to people across the state, not necessarily rooms of her supporters. She's going out and seeking out people with different opinions. And I couldn't keep up. I don't know how she does it, frankly, where she's meeting with people in 4 different cities every day, listening to them, taking their questions, and I just really appreciate that she shows up and she works hard.
So it looks to me like if, a lot of times we're electing senators kind of tied to the president, his popularity. What does she need to do to outpace? I mean, Donald Trump won by 19. You won a district that had been Republican in the past. What do you do to convince somebody that had been voting Republican to vote Democrat?
I think you listen, you take in their concerns, and then you show what results you can offer. And she, time and time again, has offered results for the state. When it comes to issues like who's going to defend my right to insurance if I have a pre-existing condition, and I do, everyone I know does, Claire McCaskill is the person who's going to fight for health care and make sure that it's affordable and that it's accessible. And Josh Hawley has a mixed he has mixed results, not mixed results. I mean, he's pretty clear in that he doesn't believe that people with pre-existing conditions should have
There are
access.
some in this race, some differences. We went through some times where there wasn't that many differences. One of them, there's differences on guns, there's differences on many issues. I think that's an interesting and maybe an ideological race. These are 2 of maybe the most articulate people to run for U.S. Senate in a long time. That could be an interesting debate.
Yeah, I suspect. Have you followed at all that Josh Hawley refuses to debate any of his primary challengers? I think that's
but is Claire McCaskill going to debate hers?
Well,
be interesting.
That's fair.
I think it'd be interesting to see Josh Hawley debate his primary folks. I think the 2 of them debating would be you'd have 2 very intelligent, articulate people that have differences of opinion. It could actually be a real debate for once.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some real debates you'll be entering into in January. So you're coming to the state Senate, obviously lots of attention on the special election. You come into a state Senate where you'll be the 10th of 34, 10th Democrat out of 34. What are you going to focus on? What will Senator Lauren Arthur actually make her priorities? What are you going to get educated on in the Senate?
Education has always been my top priority. It's my passion. I was a former teacher, and so my background is in the classroom, and I'd like to work on education issues, especially early literacy and making sure that kids are reading on grade level. It's really important, especially by 3rd grade, that kids know how to read and aren't just learning to read, but they're reading to learn, as we would say. But there is a lot of common ground and interest around early literacy, and I think we could work across the aisle on that issue. Also, prescription drug costs, just outrageous in Missouri, and really we've looked at some data. It's eating away at our Medicaid budget, or it's eating away at our budget through Medicaid, and also, a lot of consumers with private insurance are bearing those costs too, so finding ways that we can control some of that cost.
Well, congratulations on the win. We hope you'll come back as a senator on This Week in Missouri Politics and talk about your time.
Love to.
We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel. Roy Temple joins us after this.
In my state of Oklahoma, since it's become a right-to-work state, we've lost tens of thousands of jobs, and wages have gone down. I lost my job of 36 years.
Census Bureau and U.S. Department of Labor reports show that in right-to-work states, families make over $8,700 less per year, but CEOs make 361 times the average worker.
Prop A in Missouri is not what they're trying to sell you.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
At Ameren, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Our opinion maker panel, Dr. Jon Patterson, running for state rep in Lee Summit. Very glad to have you on. First of many times, I hope.
All right, glad to be here.
Rachael Dunn, the editor of the Missouri Times. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
And Roy Temple, the Prince of Plexico, probably elected more Democrats than anybody else I know. Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Good to be with you, Scott.
So let's start off at the top. Jason Kander, somebody you know well. We're here in Kansas City today. Let's talk about the guy that's probably the prohibitive favorite to be mayor of Kansas City.
Yeah, I think it was a big, bold move by Jason to decide to enter that race, and obviously everyone else will have to deal with that now, and I think he's likely to win and likely to be very successful as mayor.
Rachael, it was an interesting thing. I think it took some people by surprise that he would come into this race. What do you think he's thinking? I mean, is it a passion to serve Kansas City?
I hope so. The week before he made his announcement, the rumors went wild. He was at the NAACP dinner in St. Louis talking about voter ID and continuing his message that he's had all over the country. Yeah. So it was kind of out of left field, and I'm kind of interested how his mission over the last couple of years is going to translate to municipal office.
So, Dr. Patterson, to me, Jason Kander, when he goes on national television, he makes Kansas City look good, makes the whole state look good. Very talented guy. There'll be folks that will question, are you doing this to position for something else? You know what I mean? I noticed when he was on MSNBC last week, he tweeted a photo. He said, I'm doing it from downtown Kansas City. Is that how he's going to show that it's not just for something else?
Yeah, I think some of the other candidates have already questioned that. This really came as a surprise to me. It came as a surprise to a lot of people I've talked to in the city. I really don't know where he's going with this. Jason Kander obviously wants to be president. I don't know how this helps him at all. The last person that became president that was a former mayor was Calvin Coolidge. I also don't think that this is going to be a coronation. There are a number of other good candidates. You got Quentin Lucas. Mm-hmm. Scott Taylor has a lot of money already. They've already come out and said kind of what you said. What's your motivation for doing this? We don't want to turn Kansas City into a stepping stone to the presidency.
It's always nice. We have people that know a lot about state politics. You know national politics. I actually think if you look forward in Democratic politics, that's where a lot of the energy and things is in the cities. To me, if he has a passion to serve Kansas City, I think he's obviously the favorite to do so. But if he takes and transitions it's not a dead-end job.
Well, you know, the saying used to be that states are the laboratories of democracy, mm-hmm. and there you could test out ideas. I think we've seen in recent years mayors be the petri dishes for progressive policy. They're a chance to test out ideas and innovations, and obviously the first step to any national ambition, and I'm not suggesting that's what this is about, but the first step in that process is to have a record of accomplishment, and you got to get through primaries to do that. And frankly, your ability to try out progressive policy is probably greater as a mayor than it would be as a U.S. senator or even governor of a state, you know, in the Midwest probably. Ambition,
though, is not bad. I mean, it's not bad to have it. I mean, he's not going to run for anything else if he's a terrible mayor of Kansas City. No. So I think ambition is a good thing. It's just how do you make sure that the focus is on the city and the thing you're serving? You know, Missouri Political Reporters recently observed a very different, ambitious politician, and he went a different route, but something we learned with that candidate is that you serve the people of Missouri, or you serve the constituents that you have a lot better when you're actually in that place. Do you think there's something to be learned from that by Jason Kander? I mean, there's some things you can do and not do that he might learn from. Jason Kander's a very smart guy. Absolutely. He's been involved in Kansas City politics for a very long time. Let's talk about a Supreme Court nomination that may affect another political race. I think it was, look, I think Josh Hawley, when you're running against an incumbent, you're running against Claire McCaskill, probably the most capable politician in the state, it's a tough challenge. And there was, coming through some of the events of the last 6 months, nothing would galvanize his base behind him like talking about abortion politics in the Supreme Court. Donald Trump's going to name someone here in the next few days. The vote looks like it'll be held in October. That is a great sign for him, right?
I think you're absolutely right. I've been around eastern Jackson County talking with voters, and one of the things that Republican voters are really energized about is the Supreme Court. A lot of them voted for Donald Trump specifically because of the Supreme Court. You remember he released the list of about 20 names that he would name to the Supreme Court. That was a brilliant move, and it's very important to Republican voters. I think it will energize Republican voters in the fall.
What do you think? You've ran campaigns like this.
Well, I'll let the doctor speak to this. He probably knows the actual principle I'm referring to, but there's a notion in psychology that humans are more fearful of loss than they are excited about potential gains. So I think, in terms of the motivational impact of the sweeping implications of a Supreme Court that's handpicked by Donald Trump will likely motivate Democrats out of fear disproportionately compared to the Republicans who will be nominated by the opportunity to gain in whatever policy realm they imagine the Supreme Court will help them in. So it'll be interesting. I mean, look, that's not a absolute thing. It's to be played out, and how each candidate deals with that, how the president deals with that will all have implications in that. It's a dynamic process, not a static one. But I still say on the margin, it nets to the benefit of Democrats. On a political matter, on a policy matter, it's devastating.
Sure. I think that I'm not going to argue politics with Roy Temple. That would be the move. But what I do think is, coming out of the Greitens stuff, there were some Republicans that wanted Josh Hawley, not to do his job. They wanted him to only prosecute Democrats. When he prosecuted a Republican, they were a little sore about that. And I kind of thought there might be a protest vote in August in the primary, but in the general, they'd come around. This might galvanize that faster.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things to observe during campaigns is all the kitschy websites that pop up. And Hawley's campaign already has a site up highlighting how McCaskill could vote on the Supreme Court nominee, because there was so much blowback on her vote for Gorsuch.
I couldn't help but see you had a reaction.
Just to correct you, Josh Hawley can't prosecute anything, as witnessed by his incapacity to follow through on his press conference and see that charges were brought against Governor Greitens. And, that's been a little bit of a back and forth in that campaign. And in the state of Missouri, attorney generals can't prosecute without permission from someone else, unlike other states where attorney generals actually are prosecutors. We don't need to litigate that, but I couldn't let it pass.
I got to say, so I have to admit, I was a Kurt Schaefer guy, not a Josh Hawley guy, maybe not his biggest fan even, but he did show a lot of honor and integrity over the last 6 months. And the guy's got a backbone of steel.
Yeah, I think Josh is a very attractive candidate, conservative, independent thinker. I think you've mentioned it on this program a number of times. When they come to him and they say, you told us you weren't going to climb the ladder, I think he can tell people, I want to give you 2 words, Neil Gorsuch. They're very popular amongst the Republican faithful. I think it'll energize them and they'll come out and vote.
You're sitting in a room and somebody has an ad that they ran, similar to the ladder ad in the last cycle. They're running for U.S. Senate. What would you advise them?
Josh Hawley?
Yeah, anybody in that spot.
Don't run.
What do you think? I mean, that is an interesting thing. If you're in there and the whiteboard's rolling, what do you advise a candidate to do? I mean, I think you just got to be direct about it, right? I don't see how you can't ignore it.
He's shown he's ambitious, and from a reporter's view, he's shown he's very competent. I've been more than impressed with him on more than one occasion just attending his press conferences. He's very smart, and I don't think he went into this like willy-nilly.
All right, prediction time. Donald Trump nominates a Neil Gorsuch type person, conservative, qualified, whatever. It goes before the Senate in October. Does Claire McCaskill vote yes or no?
She votes no.
Not based on political calculation, but based on the ineptitude, which I think Donald Trump will, the person I think he's likely to pick, I think she ends up voting no, but based on it being a poor pick.
She votes no.
I'm darker. I think she's going to vote yes. Let's talk about a new situation in Missouri. I saw, normally you wouldn't ask a state Senate candidate or state senator that just won if the governor called you, it would just be assumed. In the climate we came out of, that way we had to ask her. Mike Parson called Lauren Arthur. That's kind of been emblematic of his first month in office. What has been your first impressions of Governor Mike Parson?
My impression has been that he is exactly the right person that we needed at exactly the right time. He's kind of a more conventional figure than the former governor, but I think he's really bringing people together, Democrats, Republicans. I thought it was great when he traveled to St. Louis and Kansas City, met with mayors from opposing parties. He's really trying to bring the state together. A very competent leader. We're very excited to have him.
What do you think? I mean, you do watch him every day. Definitely different. And how's it going over?
I talk to members and stakeholders every day, and they're refreshed. Like, it feels like they're taking a much-needed drink of water.
What do you think? I mean, you've sat in that governor's office. You've advised governors. What do you think of Mike Parson's first month in that office?
You know, when the day Becky Cook was sworn in as Secretary of State, she said, well, Roy, how will we know if I've done a good job? I'm really worried about this. I've never done it before. And I said to her, Becky, your predecessor was impeached. If this were the high jump, all you got to do is step over the bar. It's laying on the ground. So in that sense, I mean, Mike Parson has a very easy task to perform better in comparison to his predecessor because of Eric Greitens and his problems. With that said, I mean, look, what I think we were seeing from Governor Parson is return to normalcy. We have in that office someone who I will disagree with 7 or 8 or 9 times out of 10 on a policy matter, but I will concede that he is doing what he believes is good for Missouri, and that's what his motivation is, even when we disagree on policy outcomes. That, in some ways, used to be something we took for granted, but it's now something we learned we can't take it for granted, and it's to his credit that he does care about the state and will do what he thinks is best for it.
So we're all clear here. If there's a bad omen on the Parson administration, Becky Cook's first official major act was to cheat Mark Richardson out of the speakership. So it could be an omen for bad times if something happens to Mike Parson now, and it's all going to come back to Puxico. Let's talk about Prop A, the Right to Work initiative signed by Governor Greitens to much fanfare. Labor got the signatures to put it on the ballot in a referendum style. You vote no to get rid of right to work. What happens?
I think it fails. You've had me traveling all over the state a lot lately, and those are the yard signs I'm seeing everywhere. They've already bought digital ads. They've already got TV. They're everywhere. And it seems like their message is really resonating with voters. And I think voters understand that it's not actually a partisan issue, especially in areas like Jefferson County or St. Francis County or even Eastern Jackson County. I think that Republicans might be voting no on it.
What happens with right to work?
Well, I think it will be sustained. It was passed with broad majorities in the House and the Senate. I just see it as an issue of basic fairness. When you go to work, nobody should have a right to your paycheck before you do, besides the government, of course. But worker fairness, it allows jobs to move into Missouri. And I think there's evidence that has shown that states that have right to work, actually union membership goes up and thrives.
Let's talk about, I've always kind of felt like nobody knows what a right to work is, and if you do know, you're against it. In Puxico, I don't think people really know what right to work even is. But if you do happen to be a Teamster delivering a UPS package, you're probably not for it.
Look, the Teamster delivering the UPS package or the person working at the convenience store or the gas station in Puxico should be against it. I mean, Proposition A is right to work is mislabeled, it's misleading, it's fraudulent, and people should be rightfully skeptical about it, and they should vote no because it doesn't do what the advocates for right to work say it does, and it harms workers. If right to work were the panacea its advocates say it is, we'd all aspire to be Alabama and Mississippi and Kentucky. We don't, and that's for a good reason.
It is a little bit. You got to look across the field a little bit and feel a little sorry for those guys. I mean, the guys working on the right to work, the pro right to work side, I mean, they've had a pretty divided party. They had a guy raising national money that's obviously not there. I mean, they've not had an easy road to hoe of it.
As they say in the Baptist churches all around Puxico, you reap what you sow.
Let's talk about a person that I kind of think karma is reaping what it sowed. Mike Kehoe is the new lieutenant governor. He actually has served honorably. He served the Highway Commission. He's a serious guy. And I think if you talk about folks that could have been selected to be the lieutenant governor, a job that obviously is pretty important now, we look around at the current governor, I thought Parson maybe picked the best guy, almost like he stood out from the pack.
He has a ton of institutional knowledge. He understands business acumen, and he's genuinely likable. Yeah. So it's kind of that triple threat for a good politician. And he's been just another drink of water. I mean, just talking about what we were talking about earlier, not only do we have Parson, but now we've got Kehoe, and you've got a good team there. They worked really well together in the Senate, and I think they're going to continue to be a good team.
You know, you see right-wingers, left-wingers that just, you know, don't put a lot of thought into things. They just go to whatever extreme. Mike Kehoe is a guy that's willing to actually sit down and talk about real solutions like an adult. I think it's nice that that's rewarded. That's probably what you'd hope for people to aspire to be.
Absolutely. I think it's another home run for Governor Parson, someone that commands respect from both sides of the aisle. Also goes to kind of this healing. Who did you need to continue this healing? Someone that can work with members of both parties. So another home run.
I don't know. I mean, you got to me, Mike Kehoe harkens back into that Missouri person who can sit down and actually talk to folks from Sedalia to St. Louis and actually propose solutions to real things. I've always thought that's like to me, the hallmark of a good legislator or public policy maker is they're a serious person. He's serious.
Yeah, I mean, he had a reputation in the General Assembly for rolling up his sleeve and tackling real problems, sometimes when they weren't particularly politically advantageous to him. I mean, I've always joked that in the lieutenant governor, it doesn't matter at all who the lieutenant governor is until the day when it matters a ton. And we found out recently that that day can sometimes come. I think if that day would come, it'd likely be for a very different reason in the case of Governor Parson, but you still want someone who is capable of ascending to the job of governor. I wouldn't be supporting Mike Kehoe if he were running for governor, but I don't believe that the state would be in reckless hands or in jeopardy if he were ever to have to assume that responsibility.
Like Nicole Galloway, right? I mean, Nicole Galloway was not elected. She was appointed by Governor Nixon to the vast majority of the term. But I think Nicole Galloway is respected, and there'll be people that vote against her that disagree with her, but she's done a very honorable job.
They assume that she will competently do the job that she was appointed to and that she's currently seeking to be elected to, I think.
And I think it's kind of an argument, really, there's a court case about can the governor appoint, but Nicole Galloway is sort of a point that this can work out okay.
Yeah, that's true. A couple weeks ago, I sat down with Lowell Pearson, and he explained it very beautifully in lawyer speak. I'm not good at that, but he had a very compelling case.
Right here on the show, we appreciate all your emails and tweets that you'd rather have Rachael host the show. I'm not sure that that's not the majority view, but with a minute left, who won the week?
I'm going to say the Missouri taxpayer. There was a Supreme Court case last week, the Wayfarer case. That means that Missouri can collect sales taxes from sales from out of state. If that happens and the legislature passes that, then we could see personal income taxes or our state sales tax decrease. That's a win for Missouri taxpayers, a win for consumers.
Rachael, who won the week?
Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe. It's really nice to see a serious cheerleader for the state.
Who won the week?
Governor Mike Parson, by virtue of not being Eric Greitens.
That low bar you're talking about, right? I'm going to talk about a group that actually had a high bar. One of the things Governor Parson did, they fully funded higher education, and that day St. Louis Community College cut tuition 5%. It actually showed that these things matter, and I think St. Louis Community College won the week. We hope you'll win the week by joining us next week on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Brought to you by Spire, the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, and Sterling Bank.